Hello, Port Colborne. Thanks for tuning in to the 10th episode of our Heritage Gardening series. As we looked at last week, the summer kitchen had many tools and utensils that early settlers commonly used. The summer kitchen and lead woman in charge served various purposes. The woman obviously cooks in the summer kitchen, but what else happens in the summer kitchen? In this video, we will take a look at the different uses of the summer kitchen. This video will examine the different uses of the summer kitchen and will further look at the process of cooking. Enjoy! In the 1800s, a spinning wheel was a vital part of the settler's home. The spinning wheel was not too large or too heavy, so it could be moved and stored in any part of the room. Spinning linen was the most popular thread to involve. Following this, cotton and silk would be the next two popular materials for an early settler to use when spinning. Spinning was necessary to provide the family with equipment and clothes. It could be and was often done in the summer kitchen in between cooking and other tasks. The process of candle making was not unknown to the summer kitchen either. Typically, autumn would be the season and time that most early settlers would make their candles. This process would have taken hours, as the early settlers had to burn and boil down animal fat to turn into tallow. Although this type of wax was inexpensive and easy to obtain, wealthier settlers chose to use wax forms such as beeswax and berry bay, as it produced a better smell and was said to burn longer and stronger. Along with tallow, wicks also had to be created to make a candle. By soaking heavy cotton yarn for 12 hours in a solution of salt, boric acid, and water, the pieces of yarn could be braided together to form a wick. To make the candles, the hot wax was poured into mold or dipped into cans, along with a wick in the middle of the wax. This would allow for the tallow or other form of wax to settle and form around the wick. Although the process of making butter could technically be considered as cooking, making butter was an essential part of the early settler's life. The commencement of making butter would occur in a churn. Churning physically agitates the cream in the pot, which turns the liquid into solid chunks of butter. After completing this process, the liquid and solids particles should be separated, the liquid being buttermilk and the solid chunks being butter.
Good afternoon. So after watching our summer garden series this year with our kitchen garden and Isabella and Megan, we decided to actually show you what we do with all the produce we grew in our garden. For our reference, we've been using Mrs. Catherine Partrail's Female Immigrant Guide. And the reason I chose this book over several other cookbooks that were available around the 1840s when the Shirks would have been living in this home is because it's local to Ontario. She lived in Peterborough area. It draws on many other sources, cookbooks they would have had available at that time. A lot of cookbooks you would consider plagiarism today. They took whole chapters or passages and just passed it off as their own when they were developing a new cookbook. And because of that, it has a lot of similar information. But she was writing to those people that were coming to Canada and gives a fantastic overview of the different seasons, the things you should grow in a kitchen garden, the fruits and vegetables that were available, how you should preserve them, and what you can do recipe-wise, and what was available here, all key components. Now we do realize she was a little more far removed, being more in the backwoods area. However, since our Shirk family would have been outside of Port Colborne proper, and a lot of it I feel is still applicable, as they wouldn't have been able to go into Port Colborne or Humberston every time they ran out of preserves or they wanted to pick up more flour. They had to make things last. We have a wonderful harvest here. Our ecotourism student Megan has done a fantastic job. And over the coming weeks, we're going to start showing you how they would have used these items and how they would have preserved them so they had things later on in the season. Preserving is basically, at this point, since mason jars aren't available like we would use today, to prevent botulism and other foodborne illnesses, You would have used salt, sugar, vinegar, or spirits, essentially, to act as preserving agents. So it was not just food, but also medicines they were making from home, and things like ink that you wanted to preserve. So you might be wondering, if they didn't have mason jars, what kind of jars they would have had. And it would have been a stoneware earthen jar, similar to this one. And basically they layered it into the inside of the jar, and then they would have covered it with a pig's bladder, which sounds very off-putting to us, but it would have created that seal, and that's how they did canning prior to mason jars being invented. For our harvest, at this point, we have some lovely mint here. So we're going to use it to make some peppermint tea. Also for some flavorings for some of the other items we make this fall. We have some radishes. Now, we desperately looked through ample amount of recipes from the mid-1800s and didn't find any for preserving radishes or for making them into something other than serving them raw. Apparently they were just a raw side dish or cooked, but there wasn't a lot of fuss or care paid to them because you're not preserving them long term, you're serving them when they're in season. During the summer months, you're almost vegetarian-like. You're not bringing in a lot of meat, and because you don't have anywhere to store it. So if you consider that the hot days like we've had lately, these people would have had similar days, maybe not as many or quite as hot as we have today, but they have no refrigeration or freezing capabilities. So other than salting the meat and drying it, you really didn't have any recourse. So during the summer months, unless you're taking it and using it that day, you're going to have a lot of fresh vegetables and fruits and soups and that kind of thing. And then in the fall, winter is when you start getting more and more meat, and then using preserves on that meat as a means of flavoring it, essentially. So we also harvested some beets, which we're going to make a nice beet soup out of, as well as some beet ink. We have carrots here. They're also going to make a carrot soup, a carrot pudding, and they'll go into the tomato soup. So you can see around our cookbook there, we got a nice bumper harvest of tomatoes. Actually, reading Catherine Partrail, she says they were quite plentiful and available here in Canada during the 1850s. And she gives a recipe for drying them so you can make a sauce later, a sauce recipe, a catsup recipe, as well as a soup recipe that Mrs. Belgurns had. We also have turnip and green beans. So all of those will also get used in different applications. As you can see, they used as much as they could in singular recipes rather than today's more minimalist approach of letting an ingredient shine. They enhanced it with several different flavors, and that's because you don't have a lot of the spices, the salts, the peppers that we have today, so you're trying to make it as flavorful as possible with what you had on hand. We also have rhubarb over here, and I have a recipe for rhubarb tart as well as dried rhubarbs. We're going to give that a try. So join us this fall as we showcase all kinds of different recipes that we try out of the Catherine Parr Trails, and as we showcase what it would have been like to cook and feed your family during the 1850s. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for watching this video. As you might have learned, the summer kitchen hosted many different activities, not just cooking. The woman of the household would be the seamstress, weaver, cook, doctor, toy creator, among many other things. The basic necessities of early settlers were met in the summer kitchen. Over the last 10 weeks, we have witnessed and experienced our soaked seedlings turn into enough produce to interpret a summer kitchen and to donate. The drastic changes of our heritage garden can be viewed in the series. We hope you've enjoyed this Heritage Garden YouTube series, Port Colborne. Thanks for watching.